In today's review, we will cover an IEM that will certainly punch your eardrums from the ear-shaking amounts of bass. This earphone does sound rather similar to another influencer collab IEM, but done quite a bit better. Let me elaborate. I think HBB's original idea was to make a bass head IEM, and that IEM simply delivered a shit ton of bass. However, the manufacturer did not manage to keep up with issues such as constant delays, and what I think is not so good would be the manufacturer shipping units to distributors rather than people who actually pre-ordered the earphones themselves. I mean, that is just simply defeating the point of pre-ordering, as folks can just, hit the store and buy them while waiting for the manufacturer to actually ship. You guys know which IEM I'm talking about. Anyways, moving back to today's review, Punch Audio is a brand that popped out from virtually nowhere and delivered a hybrid IEM on their first attempt. Instead of going for a more mass market sort of signature, they opted to focus on a bass head tuning, and that is certainly rather ballsy. This is fantastic news for bass heads where traditionally it isn't catered to as much. Unboxing the Martilo is quite the standard affair. It features a sleeve with an IEM on it. You can certainly tell that these are catered to the bass head users from the excessive use of the word bass head on the side. The coolest bit of this unboxing experience would be the peekaboo doors to open, and then you'll see the earphones and a pleather pouch. Inside the pouch is where all the goodies are at. You get the cable, 2 plugs, 3.5mm and 4.4mm, some silicone ear tips, and a full set of foamies. Foamies are fantastic for bass head who some are quite allergic to treble, so with foamies you can just reduce treble even more and you will really have that dungeon-like sound if you like. Build quality. The earphones themselves are made from plastic, which ensures that they are pretty light and comfortable. Faceplate here is an interesting crack red finish that is quite unlike other sparklier offerings. The main chassis is black in color. Also featured on the Martilo is a 2-pin termination. The Punch Audio logo is located quite near the nozzle, which is quite interesting. And when it comes to how solid they actually are, they are pretty much in line with other plastic IEMs. I won't advocate for folks to drop them or actually sit on them, as it is very likely it might crack. The material of the cable isn't mentioned, but they are really rather nicely braided, and it's quite beefy compared to what is commonly seen in cheaper models. They have a friction fit plug system. I'm not a big fan of friction fit plugs because if you change the termination too much, they do get loose over time. And one interesting thing on the Martilo that caters to bass head would be that they have actually included a whole pack of foamies as well. Certainly on point, because for most bass heads, there are the subset of you who just basically want bass frequencies and are very allergic to treble. So these foamies will help them achieve their dreams of absolute darkness. Talking about sound, the Martilo is a bass head IEM through and through. It features a huge amount of sub bass and mid bass, which will rumble your world. It is a largely dynamic sounding IEM that will suit movies as well as DJ remixes very well. That said, it does not neglect on the upper mid-range to balance out the sound. There is sufficient amounts of it to give vocals definition rather than to actually have a smeary mess. And on the whole, I still find them quite competent with good technicalities, and this would really make a good pair for people who are more accustomed to a standard V-shaped IEM to dare to try to venture a different sort of signature. Bass. Bass on the Martilo is big and impactful, worthy of the bass head name. It has a beefy quantity of sub bass that is paired with a hearty serving of mid bass. Because of this, dynamics are very, very satisfying. Watching movies with the Martilo is enjoyable, as when the bass hits, it hits with a lot of force. Speed of bass is good for a bass head IEM, but you will still notice that it is a bit slower compared to that seen in a standard V shape. This is because you actually get larger resonances because of the slightly slower bass, but on the whole, I still find them to be perfectly acceptable. Bass here delivers a very satisfying thump on most tracks. If you want to hear the best, it can certainly do that. Just try out some DJ remix tracks for some great thumps. Resolution in the bass section is good for a bass head IEM. Bass here is a largely fun listen. And next, mid-range. Thankfully, Punch Audio has tuned it very tastefully by having balance upper mids to give vocals a bit more separation. Rather than let it congeal with bass becoming one huge mess, it is not. It is still perfectly nicely separated. Vocals sound very natural with just enough sparkle to be exciting. And thankfully, they did not choose to tone upper mids down, which can cause the overall sound to be a little bit dull. Vocal tone color is realistic without too much coloration of the exaggerated bass. Female vocals have a slight sparkle and is actually very well focused, while male vocals is weighty and full. Mid-range resolution is good on the whole despite the quantity of bass. Treble extension is good but clearly not the highlight of the Martilo. It extends well but does not take away from the highlight, which is bass. I found it to provide adequate amount of air to the Martilo in a way where it isn't sharp but has enough texture for it to be interesting. Still, I wouldn't call these IEM to be very airy. I think it's just enough. I think this is a very good implementation of treble because overdoing treble can make it seem a bit less bass head sounding. Thankfully, Punch Audio balanced it really rather nicely. Talking about soundstage first, when it comes to width and height, it has decent width performance, not the widest sounding due to its egregious amount of bass, but when it comes to height, it is actually really rather good. And at the end of the day, this IEM is very largely dynamic. Depth and positioning, depth is decent as well despite its more dynamic nature. This is due to the speed of the bass. Position is good as treble performance is more than sufficient in this tuning. And next up, some comparison. So versus the Fat Freak Deuce. Yes, this is the IEM I was talking about earlier. The Deuce is a worse version of the Martilo to cut things short. Both are bass hit IEMs, but it is less technically competent. On the Deuce, you lose quite a bit of resolution as the mid bass is a bit too smeary and out of control compared to the Martilo, and it gets even worse when you add the impedance adapter that is provided. That becomes way too muddy. It's just too much bass for it to be enjoyable. Bass speed is also slower on the Deuce by comparison, and as such it affects mid-range quite a bit more, so there is more smearing into mid-range. And on the whole, the Martilo is superior when it comes to resolution while giving you a solid experience on the bass front as well. Yes, it is more expensive, but I would say that it is quite a bit better if you're looking for something bass hit. And it's not even close. And next up, versus the 7Hz Legato. Now, the Legato is another bass hit IEM, but their inspiration is a bit different compared to the Martilo. The Legato is using the tuning of a classic boombox, which has a lot of character. Mid bass is a bit more prominent on the Legato, ensuring a fuller bassy sound by comparison. And also when it comes to price, the Legato is quite a bit cheaper too, and would be my choice if you're looking for a budget bass hit set. But if you want a full-bodied bass hit experience, the Martilo is my pick as it has a great balance of resolution and bass. Next, let's talk about some ratings. So based on the Martilo, it has really good quantity and really good quality. It gets a very good 7.5. Mid-range, it's sweet and really matches well with vocals, complementing bass as well, a 7.5. Treble, it's very well balanced. It extends well enough to complement the whole signature. It gets a 7. Resolution, it's a 7. It is quite resolving for a bass hit IEM, and largely soundstage, it gets a 6.5. And lastly, the enjoyment factor. I enjoy these quite a lot for their huge thumping action. It's also a great choice for those of you who want to try a bass hit IEM that has still good levels of upper mids to truly balance things out. I give it a solid A-. And in conclusion, these are a solid pair from Punch Audio, and you can say that they are certainly making a punch on their debut. Also, these are great for folks who are a little jaded from the usual V-shape and want to try out what the bass hit IEM is like. This is a very good representation. Once again, thank you for watching the Superchunk Super Audio Show. A like would be great, a subscribe would be absolutely fantastic. With that said, I hope to see you guys soon.